You want to balance the budget and pay off the debt. So that's where ours goes, and be able to go through and down. Go to the next one. Who owns our debt? Does anyone in here know where we sell our debt? We sell bonds. Where do we do it?
China.
Japan.
Well, China owns the most of ours, but do you know where we sell it at? Is it New York? No, you know where we sell it? We sell it in Washington, D.C., in Chinatown. And when I became a freshman, it took me like 6 months to allow them to let me go view it. We sell it on Mondays and Tuesdays. And in bad weeks, it's Wednesdays and Thursdays as well. And it's a little room. It's a room about this big, glass. And it's an auction. And if somebody didn't buy our debt, it's 30 seconds before the rest of the world knows it. Now, that's never happened to us. But it's happened in England twice after the financial shutdown. So you know what the Fed did? The Fed said, okay, we got an idea. If they don't buy the debt, we'll buy it. Well, that's equivalent. You're going to the bank and saying, I need a loan. Oh, they won't give it to me. That's okay, I'll loan it to myself. That is what's transpiring with Bernanke's QE2 and others. But I want you to see, in 1970, 5% of our debt. Now, this is public debt. We also own some of our own debt. 1990, 19%. 2010, 47%. China being the largest at 25%. 5 countries mainly own our debt. Now, it becomes a problem, one, about paying your debt, but when your debt becomes so large, you're owned by somebody, it becomes a difficult where it affects your foreign policy. Now, I want to tell you a little story that puts that into perspective. A year ago this February, America did 2 things that month. America sold our weapons to Taiwan. We have a relationship with Taiwan and our 3 communiques with China. We also allowed the Dalai Lama to come that month and visit the president. 2 things China dislikes, okay? Now, this time when the Dalai Lama came, he didn't get a picture with the president. He had to leave out the back door. But what they also did, China said we are not at an all-time low in our relationship, which was not true. China canceled our Secretary of Defense from going to China to visiting their Secretary of Defense. He just now got to do it this February. But China did something else that month. When we're in every week selling our debt, instead of buying it, China was selling our debt as well. Now, if you're selling something and somebody else is selling the same thing, you have to make yours more attractive, right? How do you make debt more attractive? You raise the return. Now, if we raise the return, what's that mean? We all pay more. That affects our foreign policy. Why would we ever put ourselves in that predicament? You know, I've been taking members down every week to go and view the debt. I can only take 8 at a time. And we go in, we have a discussion, they lay out a thing, and we go in and view the debt, the auction. And so, I'm thinking along the lines that if this was our household, everybody's gone through a financial crisis, right? If we have a financial tough time, what do? We sell some assets, right? So maybe if we have an extra car, we sell it. We don't go to Disneyland that month. We have some garage sales. We cut back. So I said, well, why isn't our government doing some of these things? So I said, which countries are America invested in that we can sell their bonds, right? So which countries are the top countries we have invested in? Anybody know? There are none. We have no money to invest in any country. So think for a moment, that chart I gave you before where we were asking the other countries to fund our social welfare, and which countries are we asking to do it? China, Russia? I thought we collapsed these countries. I thought our foreign government was better. But we're allowing them to fund our way of life. That to me is not a future that's bright. Go to the next one. This shows you where it goes through. You'll see the United Kingdom. Okay, China, they were talking about maybe a real estate bubble. Japan just had terrible tragedy over there with everything. Are they going to be able to be buying more, need more? They just went out and cut 25% right now. I mean, we're cutting where we're slowing the growth of government, cutting some of government. They go in and cut Medicare right now 25% to the recipients of where they are. They're selling battleships. Brazil, Taiwan, Russia. Now, interesting story with Russia. When I first got elected to Congress, George Bush gave a State of the Union, and they called over and they said, the president's going to California tomorrow. Would you like to fly with him? I said, yes, and I'm going to steal everything you don't have tied down. So I'm just warning you ahead of time, right? So I get on there, and we fly out. You get to spend a little time with the president up front. And Putin was really attacking America at the time. And I was wondering if he was doing it for political reasons to get his guy elected president. Because I know Bush always had a good relationship with Putin. So I asked Bush about it. And the president said to me, you know, when Putin first came to see me, he was complaining that he was having to pay this debt for all these countries that had left the Soviet Union. He didn't think it was fair. Then as the energy prices went up and he had more money, he came in later and said, hey, Mr. President, how are my T-bills doing? How's your country doing? You know, I got a lot invested in you. And he said another interesting story to me. He said, you know, I took Putin to Kennebunkport because I never took any other world leader there. But I wanted to show it was special because I wanted to build this relationship. And if you ever went into the White House, Bush had this little dog, Barney, and he'd run around all the time. I mean, you'd be in a meeting and Barney'd run through the room and run back the other way. Cute dog, he'd be having a little ball he'd chase around. And Bush had introduced him to Barney, didn't think anything of it. Just like going to your house and say, oh, this is my dog. So he's with Putin like 9 months, a year later, and they're over in Russia, and they're away from the Kremlin. They're out at a summer place. And Putin says to him, you want to meet my dog? Bush likes dogs. He said, yeah, sure. Putin whistles, and out comes running this big hound. And Putin says, look, bigger, stronger, faster than Barney. The guy thinks I'm KGB. Even his dog, he's competing with America. And we're letting that guy invest in our country. That's who we're asking for money from. Go to the next one. I'd like to put this perspective up, and we give this PowerPoint to members to go around, because one of the toughest jobs in America doesn't quite understand of what the problem is that we have so large. With the interest we pay to China on our debt, China can afford to buy 3 new Joint Strike Fighters every single week and still put $50 million in the bank. So we thought, let's take the number and tell them and show people what they can do with their money. But that's not that's our money paying to them of interest. It's just like what we do in our energy policy. We send it other places instead of in America when we have reserves here. North Dakota has gone from 8,000 barrels a day to 240,000 barrels a day because technology allows it to go down. The unemployment rate in North Dakota is less than 3%. Their congressman told me that their Carl's Jr. shut down in the afternoon one day. I said, why? He said, they couldn't find somebody to get to work. I'd rather spend the money in American jobs and our own resources than send someplace else. All right. This is the thing that we need to challenge each and every person, because Pelosi is going to go very strong on the president not to do anything with the Republicans when it comes to reforming any of the entitlements. They think they won an election in New York, and they think they can win the majority by demonizing us. All right? Any elected official that tells you Medicare, Social Security, and Medicaid are fine, they've never read anything that the actuaries have done. They are all going bankrupt. So I know they're harming it. But every year they avoid the problem, they add $11 trillion to the unfunded. So now you make the problem so large, your options to fix it become less. It's easier to fix a problem when it starts, it's not as severe. But every year they avoid it, it just compounds itself. Remember what Einstein said, the only miracle in this world is the time value of money. Well, that works the same way when the time value of debt builds up. This is the one, and the president just called all the Republicans down to the White House a week ago. And when he first asked, we said, well, with all the security and all the transportation, why don't you just come to our conference? No, you got to come to the White House. We said, all right. And the president usually likes to have these meetings like he's a college professor. He stands at the top. He has you sit in like a college auditorium. He talks. Then he calls on you. You don't get to raise your hand. He goes, all right, your question. I mean, it's really strange. Then he walks out. So we said, we'll come down, but let's all be seated. Nobody higher. And then we sat in a row, and it was Boehner and Cantor, then myself and Jeb, and then we asked the questions. And when we went down, he started asking us questions. And when he was finishing Cantor's question, the president said that, he said, taxes were at an all-time low to GDP versus 1980. And this is why he said this, but this is not true. So we got down when I got to my question. I said, Mr. President, before I get to my question, I'm sorry, I just have to correct something. We're not at an all-time low, and we're not in 1980. We're in the 21st century, and we're competing with India and China, and our taxes are at the highest. Now, what this shows you, on average, government will bring in 18% of GDP in revenue from taxes. During the financial crisis, we hit at 14.9. That's what he was saying. But it peaks back up. Now, what this tells you, leaving these three entities alone, I don't put in here defense, I don't put in here any of the departments, anything like that. If you leave this alone, these three entities will take every single dollar that comes into government to pay for them. And that's what's compounded. So, here's the problem, here's what's before us, and we cannot ignore it. So we crafted a budget, and we didn't hide from the fact. Now some people think it didn't go fast enough. We believe when we crafted it, it's something that, one, it can solve the problem and start putting us on the right path, but if somebody else has a better idea, put the idea out there. But we're not going to shy away from reforming and saving these entitlements from different ways, but also to grow our economy. We reformed our tax code in there. We reformed our energy policy, but people don't talk about that. And the last part of my question when I went to the president, I wanted to talk about the debt limit. So, Mr. President, before ever we talk about the debt limit, we first have to agree on principles to discussion. The first thing we have to agree on, if either side says they have a plan, but the Congressional Budget Office can't score it, it's not a plan. Because he says he has a plan because he has a speech. Then I said, we have to agree that we're going to make cuts, we're going to put caps in so government can't grow so fast again, and we're going to have entitlement reform. If you agree to those, we can sit down and talk to you. But if not, it's a hard time getting there. Then I said to him at the very end, Mr. President, you've been demonizing our budget. With all due respect, your party's in the majority in the Senate, and your budget that you produced, our budget got 40 votes, your budget got 0 to 97. So I think one budget is a little better than the other. So let me stop there. Let me take any questions that you have, concerns. Ideas are always very, very positive. I can answer anything you want to go. Yes?
Well, Kevin,
Oh, I'm sorry.
what we're going to do